Good morning, Tallahassee. It's time to wake up War Chant on 97.9 ESPN Radio. Here's WarChant.com's Aslan Hajavandi and Corey Clark.
Oh, girls just wanna have fun. Oh, girls just wanna have fun. Yeah, girls just wanna have. That's all they really want.
Wake up! It's Wake Up War Chant. It's 97.9 ESPN Radio in Tallahassee, brought to you by For the Table Hospitality. And there are three awesome locations over in the Collegetown District, Central, Madison Social, and Township. Go ahead, check them on out. Maybe no better time than later tonight as Florida State goes for their first ever national title in softball. 1-0 winners over Washington last night. What a game, Corey! What a game!
It really was. I know people that aren't, maybe the biggest softball fans in the world might think, and didn't watch the game or think, 1-0 softball game. How exciting could that have been? But, man, the last couple innings were really kind of nerve-wracking. I don't really have a dog in the fight. It'd be cool for Florida State to win because I like Lonnie Alameda. And so that would be cool and I like Jessie Warren a lot. Did a story on her last year. She's a really cool kid. So from that perspective, I want them to win. But, I wasn't all that nervous. It's like, okay, let's hope they win. And then I even felt I'm not that invested. And I was even getting nervous at the end. And then obviously the play that Warren makes, no matter what happens over the next two nights, obviously if they win, it'll be ingrained even more. But that is one of the plays in Florida State history. Just an incredible, incredible diving catch. People, if you haven't seen it, go find a way to see it. It was, it was one of the top plays on SportsCenter, the top play on SportsCenter. It is an incredible, incredible catch. One of the best defensive plays I've ever seen on a diamond, no matter who, women, men, baseball, softball, just an incredible, almost game-saving catch, probably a game-saving catch. And it's almost hard to describe. Just incredible.
Yeah, and it definitely had to put all the momentum back in Florida State's favor. Florida State was clinging to a 1-0 lead via Anna Shellnut home run in the sixth inning. And then in the bottom of the seventh, Washington goes ahead and puts the leadoff runner on, and they go to bunt. And as Corey outlined, Jessie Warren makes just an absolutely phenomenal effort and comes up with a catch. And when I saw her dive, it was kind of like a bless your heart, like way to hustle. This is not going to work out. It's going to be okay. You're going to knock it down. But the fact that she caught it, I stood up like out of my chair. I was like, whoa. I got a buddy who's like pushing 3 bills. And he likes to think that we could get 4 other guys or like 3 other guys and me, and we could hang with the WNBA team. And I'm like, I don't really think so. I'm not that guy. I don't think that just you put men on a field with women and men's athletic ability just naturally takes over because I don't have professional ability. But like you said, that regardless of gender,
your buddy is a dummy, by the way. But go ahead.
No, he's not. I appreciate where his head's in the right place. His heart's in the right place. His head is no longer in the right decade. Apparently,
I get it. Like maybe a high school team, but you and your buddies would not compete with a WNBA team. These are 30-year-old women that are the best in the world. They would and in great shape.
Yeah,
they would beat you by 50 points.
You haven't seen me play defense. It's okay.
Like some great, I don't know if like Bob Sura is one of your close friends.
We got a couple guys that play D1 in the clique that we can maybe roll out and get some ringers out there.
Oh, well, there you go. That's different.
But anyhow,
also, you got to anyway, sorry. Go ahead.
Amazing. It was to see your best player lay out in that moment and then to come up with it. It was everything antithetical to what Florida State baseball is and possibly a harbinger of things for what Florida State softball can become. Just freaking hell of a play. I still can't believe it. Awesome. And as you said, probably, the best play in Florida State women's athletic history. I don't know, was there any sort of crazy goal they scored to win the national title a few years ago back in soccer, but nothing comes to my mind. That play, and not to have recency bias and be a prisoner of the moment, but just again, what a hell of a play, man. And Florida State now just one victory away from winning their first ever national title in softball. The ACC would win their first national title in softball too. That's crazy, man. Crazy.
Yeah, they're not. Certainly, the ACC isn't a powerhouse, and it would be great for the conference to win it. But I'm not, me, I'm not really a conference pride guy. This is a Florida State thing, and look, Jessie Warren. I joked on it on Seminole Headlines last week, actually, just because I think it's the Mount Rushmore stuff is so goofy, and I was just saying it in jest. But she legitimately is, and I tweeted this, on Monday night. she is legitimately one of the best athletes in Florida State history. She's the best softball player they've ever had, and it's a good softball program. But for her to have that moment was so neat because every Florida State, even casual fan now that's not even following these games, but sees that on SportsCenter or sees that on Twitter is like, wow, they're going to know that name and they're going to remember that play. It is just an all-time play from an all-time great player. And I'm really happy for her. I wrote a story on her last year. She's a really, really cool girl, a great Seminole, has been awesome since she got to Florida State. One of the all-time, career NCAA leaders in home runs and RBIs, and then she makes that Brooks Robinson type play, which will go down in Florida State history whether they win or lose. And there's always something special about greatness making plays in moments like that. And what that must have done to the other dugout, completely deflated it. And what it must have done for Florida State fans everywhere to that was, there's the Rashad Green catch against Notre Dame. There's Peter Warwick maybe against Virginia Tech was a great catch, but that game was kind of already wrapped up at that moment. That just put it away. This pretty much saved the game because if she doesn't make that play, it's probably first and second, nobody out with all their good hitters coming up. And they're going to at least get one run out of that, you would think, maybe two, and they win the game, and it's a heartbreaking loss. Those are just, again, it's so special to see greatness make great plays. It's like Steph Curry in the finals, Tom Brady in a Super Bowl, and I say that as a Falcons fan. Even Julio Jones in that Super Bowl making that incredible catch that ended up being for naught because the Falcons inexplicably had to punt 2 plays later. But when greatness makes plays like that, man, that's awesome. And Jessie Warren etched her name in Florida State history with that. It was already there anyway. It should have been, but she etched it in Florida State history with that play. Just an unbelievable play. And kudos also to Megan King for the shutout. Oh, yeah. Let's not overlook that. And then Shelnut with the home run to essentially win the game. Put them up anyway. Speaking
of catches, rest in peace to Dwight Clark, man. Perhaps the most iconic.
Yeah, that's a bummer. No relation, but that's a bummer.
Yeah.
How old was he? 61. I didn't see how old he was.
61, man. 61. I'm a big Joe Montana guy. I'll fight to the hilt that Joe Montana's the best quarterback who's ever lived. So that's the most iconic touchdown maybe in NFL history, thrown by the best quarterback who's ever lived. So, heck of a catch there, and then heck of a catch by Jessie Warren. Is she better than Jessica Burroughs, though? Is Jessica Burroughs not the best softball player in Florida State history?
No, it's Jessie Warren.
Okay.
It's Jessie Warren. Again, what she did Monday night on that stage after what she did in the Supers, and then she had a couple doubles in that game too. She is just one of the best softball players. I don't know how else to say it. One of the best softball players that's ever lived. I mean, she's just, and Florida State fans should embrace that for the rest of time, that they had that player for 4 years and what she did for the program. Hopefully her career ends up with a national championship. Even if it doesn't, that play will go down in history. It should be a statue or something outside of the stadium. It took your breath away. I'll stop harping on it. I know we're going to be talking to Ira. We'll talk about it more. So get ready, folks. It's going to be 30 minutes of Jessie Warren diving catch talk. But that was a really fun thing to see, and it was a really fun thing to see her teammates' reaction. Like, they couldn't believe it either. They were all stunned.
Yeah. You can't, I mean, it's not, I don't want to say physically impossible because it happened, but again, when she dove for it, just one of those things where you're like, this is awesome. The best player on your team is still playing with all of her guts and strength and going after things, even if it's all in vain. And then, she makes a catch, and you're like, oh, my gosh. And then she fires right back up. And listen, it's not easy after you throw yourself like that to pick yourself back up and fire a throw to first base and get the double play. So, I mean, everything. There wasn't, 10 out of 10 on degree of difficulty, 10 out of 10 on execution. It was fantastic, man. It's obviously the best softball play in Florida State history. They'll try to close things out in Game 2 tonight at 8 o'clock Eastern time, 7 p.m. Oklahoma City time, which is where Ira Schoffel is. He'll be joining us shortly. But Corey, I don't know. I mean, so is this like 2004 Red Sox sort of stuff where you have to go through all this craziness just to get to the World Series or the final set, and then I don't want to say you make. I mean, did the Red Sox sweep the Cardinals in 2004?
Yeah, they did. Yep, they won 8 straight after getting down 3-0 to the Yankees.
Yeah. So do you feel like, I don't know, that was such an iconic play. I mean, do you feel that maybe Florida State, maybe things are in their favor that they'll go ahead and wrap this thing up tonight?
Oh man, it's really hard to predict.
Come on.
I know.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I'm with you.
My hunch, and it's only because I'm cynical by nature, is I feel like it'll go to a game 3. But it would be great if Florida State wrapped it up. Obviously, tonight that would be great, and I will be rooting for them, so that's cool. But I don't know how much momentum plays a role in this because look, you were just talking about it. Like Florida State, if momentum really mattered, Florida State wouldn't even be in Oklahoma City. Yeah. So after LSU hit that game-tying grand slam in Game 2 of the Super Regional, there's no reason for Florida State to be in Oklahoma, but they rallied, and Washington's really good, so there's no reason to think they won't. But, hey, man, Washington's got to go win 2 games, and Florida State, talk about that margin for error. It's going to be really hard to beat Florida State twice, and that's what Washington's up against now. And, again, that's why it comes back to Megan King pitching so well and that incredible play. And, again, people might say that's hyperbole to say it's the best because obviously me and you haven't seen a ton of the best softball plays in Florida State history, but there literally can't be a better play.
On that stage,
she was
too.
perpendicular to the ground on that stage in that moment, because obviously Florida State's never been on this stage, to make that play where she was trending on Twitter nationwide, a softball player. That's how good that play was. It's just you have to see it to believe it, and even when you see it, you don't believe it. When you see the still shot of where the ball is when she's in her mid-dive, you're like, well, that's silly. Why are you even doing that, like you said? And it somehow ends up in her glove, and she has the wherewithal to get up and complete the double play. Man, just awesome stuff. They need to close it out.
They do. I wish I would list their height on the roster because she's not a tall drink of water. She looks probably like 5'5", 5'6", probably. I mean, so she's not a gangly, long, lengthy, rangy player. I mean, so the fact that she laid out and made the catch was awesome. She's from Tampa too, so represent 813. Make some noise. But hey, the sharpest set of eyes on the Florida State beat, Ira Schoffel, our managing editor. He's in Oklahoma City. We'll get his reaction from last night's 1-0 win for Florida State. Don't forget, Game 2 will be right here on 97.9 ESPN Radio. That game, again, that will start at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 7 p.m. Oklahoma City time. We'll go there. We'll talk to Ira right after this. It's Wake Up War Chant, 97.9 ESPN Radio.
You're locked in to Wake Up War Chant on 97.9 ESPN Radio.
Welcome on back. It's Wake Up War Chant, 97.9 ESPN Radio, brought to you by For the Table Hospitality. There are 3 locations over in the College Town District. We teased it, as they say in the radio and entertainment business. We teased that we'd have some boots on the ground, 5-star Ira Schoffel, and we're going to deliver it right now. Ira joining us from Oklahoma City. Ira, how are you, bud?
I'm great, guys. How are you?
Good. Corey, say hi to Ira.
Hey, Ira, what's up, buddy? How is Oklahoma this time of year?
It's pretty good, Corey. I think you missed out on the opportunity. I gave you the opportunity. You had other obligations, apparently. You couldn't make it. So I took the trip, and, hey, Florida State's 1-0 on the brink of a national championship. So things are good, buddy.
You won. And, Aslan and I talked about it in the first segment. Can you remember another catch like that one? And I'm not even talking about Florida State. I mean, we can limit it to Florida State. But that is an incredible play by an incredible player. I mean, she's like perpendicular to the ground. It's what was it like in the building when she made that play?
Yeah, the vantage point for the media at the stadium is right behind home plate. And it's an outdoor press box. So I mean, literally, you feel like almost like you're at a park and watching kids play Little League or something. We're that kind of close to the action. And have such a good view. We're not in like an enclosed press box or anything. And so you really got to feel it. And I mean, I thought for sure that was falling in. And when she dove sideways, I mean, when she was in the air, I'm thinking, oh my God, she might catch this ball. But then when you watch the replays, when it happened live, it was kind of like a blur. But then when you watch the replays, it's just unbelievable. I mean, the still pictures and also the replays, because you see she ends up kind of on the first base side of the field when she catches it. And, Megan King, the pitcher, we were trying to get her to kind of describe her emotions. And she said it was just, it was all just such a blur. She said she thought she's coming forward. If you watch it, she's coming forward. She thinks she's going to have to lay out for it. but then she hears Jessie coming, and teammates say that they've seen her make plays like that before, which may or may not be true. I'm guessing she makes plays like that sometimes, but in that moment where you feel like Washington's got a chance here to kind of get a little momentum back, maybe put some pressure on Florida State in the seventh inning, and then to turn into a double play, she dives, makes catches, eating dirt, gets up, and makes the double play. It's just I think it's an all-time play. I think it's an all-time play in Florida State sports history.
Ira Schoffel, the managing editor of WarChant.com, joining us here on Wake Up WarChant. He's over in Oklahoma City. Ira, you've been to Omaha a few times for the College World Series. How does the environment in Oklahoma City stack up?
It's just like a little smaller version of it. It's very similar in that you have a lot of fans here who are not really fans of any team. They're just here because they buy their tickets ahead of time. I was talking to one of the marketing guys beforehand, and he said they've already got 1,200 seats sold for next year's game. He said, by the time the field's announced, you can't just get tickets. They might have some single game tickets, but you can't really buy season tickets once the field's announced. The people of this area and just college softball fans around the country have already bought tickets beforehand. In the hotel, I ran into a family from South Carolina who his kids are playing travel softball. So, hey, let's go to the Women's College World Series for this summer on vacation. So I just think there's a lot of that. It's not necessarily, I think there was 8,200 fans of the game. It's not like it was 4,000 Washington, 4,000 Florida State. There might have been 200 Florida State, 200 Washington, and then 7,500 college softball fans. It's pretty cool. I mean, they're into it. And I think it'll be interesting to see who they embrace tomorrow. Do they embrace Washington as kind of the perceived underdog now who has to win a game to extend it? Or do they embrace Florida State because of the way they played last night?
The thing about the Warren play, not to harp on that, but I mean, it should be harped on. I mean, it's just an incredible play. If she dives and tips the ball at all, if it deflects off her glove at all, I don't know how much people watch softball. The girl that bunted it was left-handed and really fast. So if it deflects off her glove at all and trickles down even 3 feet, she's safe. And it's first and second, nobody out with their hitters coming up. And so it's not just her making that play was a double play. It was such a do or die type play because I think if she deflects it at all, like maybe if Megan King feels it cleanly, she can throw the girl out at first, like just run up, pick it up, and throw it, but it would have been close. But if she deflects it towards the dugout, man, you're first and second, nobody out, and then you're in real danger of losing the game. And so again, I can't think of another, Rashad Green against Notre Dame in 2014 making a catch by the sideline where a great player, one of the all-time greats, steps up on that kind of stage. That was, to me, is what's so neat is now I don't know how many Florida State fans, casual fans, know about Jessie Warren, but now they all know Jessie Warren. And I think that's just really neat for her on her senior season to have a moment like that.
Yeah, and that's the thing. And what I kind of wrote about in my column is that, there were a bunch of heroes in that game, but there were really impressive performances throughout the lineup and throughout the entire team. I mean, you had so many different people step up in different ways. And so, on the one hand, it's a shutout. So you'd say, okay, well, Megan King deserves all the attention. She just pitched a shutout against Washington, in the championship series, the Women's College World Series. But then, Jessie Warren makes that catch. Anna Shellnut hits the home run that breaks the scoreless tie. I mean, that pitcher for Washington was kind of, having her way with Florida State. And, she runs into one, hits a home run to center field, gets them the 1-run lead. Just really across the board, they had so many different players step up. So it's neat to see a team like that where, it's not just one. I mean, Jessie Warren is the star of this team. She's the big home run hitter. She's a great defensive player. She's an emotional player, but it's not just about one player. They had so many different players step up.
Ira, we joke about it with Jimbo back in 2012, that Orange Bowl season, winning 12 games. He talked about, teams have to win something to learn how to, I guess, keep winning or something along the lines of that. But for Florida State, and Corey's mentioned it a few times, and I think, Coach Alameda mentioned in her post-game press conference, like last year losing to LSU and everything was set up for that team and it all just went so horribly wrong for them. I guess, is that really kind of the motivating force for them now? The these next two games, if there are going to be two games, or at least on Wednesday night?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's no doubt. I mean, that's, you could almost feel her. You could almost feel her eyes rolling, and the players kind of, not kind of rustling in their seats when those questions were asked, because, there's two ways to look at it. Number one, this Florida State team has had, they've been, the cardiac kids. They've had all these comebacks. They've won all these elimination games, and now the script is flipped. They're the team in the catbird seat. They're the team that has a chance to put it away with a win. And, she reflected, and I think she told the team in the locker room about, last year when they were in that position against LSU. And I think that they focused too much. Admittedly, they're admitting it. They focused too much on the fact that they were in such good position, and that causes you to let up a little bit. So they're really trying hard to not do that. And it's a fine line. I mean, that's the challenge in sports in these types of situations is you don't want to be tight because, you played well when you played loose, but at the same time, you don't want to take it for granted. You want to be sharp because, again, I think they felt like last year they felt good about themselves being up 1-0 against LSU, and it ended up, they probably weren't as sharp as they needed to be. So that's kind of the balance they're going to try to find, and it's a unique situation. And look, Washington's really good. They were number one in the country for most of the season. They kind of stumbled a little bit late. But, if they win that first game tomorrow, if they win that game tomorrow, tonight, and even the series, now it's wide open. So Florida State really has to win this game and lock it up because, you just don't want to get in that situation where it's winner takes all on Wednesday.
Ira,
is it a shame at all that you don't get like a night off to go to Oklahoma, like go see the sights?
Man, the nice thing is the games are ending a little, they're going to end a little bit early. So, we can see, see a little bit. Plus we get the, a little bit of time during the day. So no, it's going to be good, man. It's a good trip. The nice thing about it in general is softball games don't usually last that long. Of course, if I'm covering a softball game, it's going to go 2.5, 3 hours because that's every time I've ever covered a college softball game, that's what's happened. So even a 1-0 game, it seems like it's going to drag on forever. But, hey, the end result was a lot of fun, obviously. The last couple innings were, those last 2 or 3 innings were as fun as a sporting event as you're going to see. The first 5 innings were a little dull, but the last 2 or 3 innings were awesome.
How was the travel out there, Ira? Where did you connect?
It was not easy, buddy. We made the flight at the last minute. Obviously Sunday night when they clinched the appearance in the championship series. So getting a flight from Tallahassee to Oklahoma City on about 8 hours' notice is not real easy. So flew from Tallahassee to Atlanta to Houston to Oklahoma City.
Boy.
And so it was a good day. But all the flights made it on time, buddy. So it all worked out pretty good. And like I said, it's a cool experience. When you guys asked it compared to the College World Series on the men's side, it's very similar. It really is. It's got the same feel, just smaller, obviously, in the size of the crowd.
Last question for you, Ira. Put on your coaching cap. Does Megan King start tonight, or do you think they go back to Kylie Hansen?
I would think they go back to Hansen, just because I don't know that you want to have the same pitcher go out that many innings in a row. But look, man, Megan King was very impressive and kind of an underlying storyline. If you guys watch the press conferences, you might have seen from Washington's perspective. They're and you can see the way they played. They did not like the fact that she quick pitches. She has a reputation for being a pitcher who pitches very, very fast and gets in a rhythm. And they were complaining about that. They were trying to stall. They were trying to delay. But they got her called for one quick pitch during the game. So that battle, I think Washington really made that a point of emphasis. And I think it ended up hurting them more than it did Florida State. So maybe there's some merit to saying, hey, you guys can't handle what she does, and it's affecting you. So let's go ahead and ride this out. But my guess is they'll go with Hansen and then go with King, maybe either save it or, if she has to pitch in the third game.
Corey, wish Ira well on the rest of his travels.
Ira, I really wish I could be out there with you. You know how much I love flying. In fact, I was near Atlanta. So how easy would it have been for me just to fly straight from Atlanta to OKC? But Ira, you know how it is. I got Brady. Otherwise, I would be out there with you, man. You know that.
Well, everybody's asking about you, Corey. Everybody expected you here, so they're all asking about you. But I'm coming up with some good lies to explain it all.
Thank you. Hey, just say I have to be with my son. That's I'm the single dad. People can't complain about that.
It's more fun to make up stories.
Brady has a signed softball from Jesse Warren.
In his bedroom. Better save that,
so that's kind of cool.
You need to save that.
Managing editor of WarChant.com, Ira Schoffel, joining us from Oklahoma City. Ira, hopefully they'll get it done tonight and you can make your way back to Tallahassee. We appreciate you, bud. Have a good one out there.
Thanks, guys. Take care.
I love you, Ira.
Every
time I tell him, he hangs up.
Just missed him, man. All right, let's take a break. We'll be right back. It's Wake Up War Chant, 97.9 ESPN Radio in Tallahassee.
The Sod Cemetery, Osceola and Renegade, and of course, the War Chant. These are great traditions known to all Seminole fans. If you are a card-carrying, garnet and gold-wearing Nole, don't you deserve a site that is truly dedicated to covering FSU sports? WarChant.com's staff has over 50 years of experience covering the Seminoles. WarChant.com is the only FSU outlet with a full-time recruiting analyst in Tallahassee. Plus, it's the only site with a full-time videographer and a daily podcast, 100% dedicated to FSU sports. Why act like Gators and settle for second best? WarChant.com, your ultimate Seminole sports source.
Wake Up War Chant, 97.9 ESPN Radio in Tallahassee. I'm Aslan, joined by Corey Clark, senior writer and columnist for WarChant.com. Show brought to you by For the Table Hospitality. So the MLB draft is in full swing. Casey Mize from Auburn, right-handed pitcher, went first overall. Who did he go number one overall to? The Tigers? I think the Tigers.
Yeah, the Tigers got him.
And then the catcher from Georgia Tech, what was the guy's name? Something Bart? Bart something? What's the guy?
Joey Bart.
Joey Bart. There we go. Thanks.
Joey Bart.
He goes 2 overall to the Giants. They already have a catcher. His name is Gerald Dempsey. Gerald Dempsey Posey.
Yeah. They do. Brady, it's funny. Brady asked me that when I told him, he's like, who got the Georgia Tech catcher? Because, of course, my son follows the Major League Baseball draft like all normal 9-year-olds. And I said, the Giants got him. He's like, well, they got Buster Posey. What do they want him for? And I'm like, well, Buster's like 32 and a couple, he's 31 maybe. And this guy won't be the majors for at least a couple years. And he goes, well, Buster's only going to be 33 or 34. What are they going to do then? They don't need 2 catchers. And I'm like, hey, man, that's a good point. I think they'd like to move Buster Posey to first base maybe, though, to take that wear and tear off his body. Yeah. And then he's like, well, what are they going to do with Brandon Belt? And I'm like, all right, Brady, just eat your dinner. But either way, that was surprising. I mean, I guess people thought he would go that high, but it is a little surprising that the Giants would take him because the Giants seem to be set there. But I guess the thinking is Buster can't play forever, number one. And also he does play first sometimes, and maybe in the future they want him to move there full-time so he can really stop with the wear and tear on his body.
Yeah, I think the way the timeline works, I think, Buster was 2 years in the minors or maybe 3 years in the minors, but Brandon Belt's contract will be up in 2021. Posey's, I think, is either up in 21 or 22, and he's got a player option. So, that gives them the flexibility that if this guy proceeds to, do what Buster did in the minor leagues, they can bring him up in 2 or 3 years and then slide Buster to first. And then, Brandon Belt, there's casualties. It's how it happens, man. It's the way things shake out. But, I'm thinking about what you said on the show yesterday in terms of all the draft eligible guys on Florida State's team you assume are probably going to be gone and, go to the bigs. So then I obviously look to the future and I start looking at the roster. And I mean, I guess it's silly to panic or worry because this is something that happens every year for Florida State. And for the last 40 years, they keep winning 40 games every year. But I don't know, is there any, when you think about what they're losing, they're going to lose what? At this point, 2, 3, and 4 out of the lineup. And then what? Even 5, because I think Mendoza was batting 6. So you're going to lose Applin, or you're going to lose Luke, Applin, Raleigh, and Wells. It's big. It's a sizable chunk of your lineup gone.
Yeah, that's a worry for sure. I'll always say this and always do. Even this year, I don't think Florida State's offense was very good this year. I didn't think it ever really clicked.
No.
But I would still harbor to guess they were one of the best offenses in the country. Just runs, touching home plate, getting on base and touching home plate. They did that more than most teams, the vast majority of most teams. That'll be the case again next year. I think Reese Albert is the next star. I think Cooper Swanson has a chance to be a nice player, but I think Reese Albert is the next star for Florida State baseball. I think Mendoza needs and will take a big step up in his money year. And after that, you just got to sprinkle guys around him, man. When you think about that, they weren't that good they just weren't I don't know. There were just times when they weren't overly impressive. They ended up putting up the numbers, putting up the stats like they always do. But how many of those guys had great seasons? Raleigh, right? Applin was a good hitter. They'll miss Applin. But I think he had 2 home runs, which is crazy at Florida State for a left-handed number 3 hitter in this day and age. But so they're gonna miss those guys. They'll fill in like they do. I think next year it's going to be about pitching, and I know they faded there at the end. I do think they have some serious arms that when they get more experience will be really good. I think Drew Parrish will be probably the best returning pitcher in the ACC if he ever gets over his last pitch of 2018.
I don't know if you're joking, but that's a little bit of concern. I would think, man, a little bit. I mean, that's just it's still. This is like post-traumatic. I mean, when it happened, it was just like, okay, it's done, it's over. I'm going down to the press conference, and then on Sunday, watching the Mississippi State, Samford, the Oklahoma game, they kept showing it. I'm like, oh. And then thinking about on Monday, watching like what Florida State's softball team did, and then what Florida State's baseball team does every year, it just kind of stayed in my head, and just it keeps getting more painful, keeps eating at me. I'm just like, golly, I just can't believe it happened that way to that kid of all people too.
Yeah, because he was the best pitcher all year. It was just lights out. He was just really good that game and really good all season. And you just hope that his last pitch of 2018 doesn't stay with him. I don't think he's that type of kid. I also think it's different than like, if a closer gives up a game-winning 3-run homer in that spot, like say C.J. Van Eyck came in and gave up a home run in that spot to lose the game, to lose essentially the season, I think you'd worry, man, that might really stick with him next year. Yeah. Number one, I don't think Drew Parrish expects to be in the 9th inning of many games next year after a 2.5-hour rain delay. So I think it's probably easier to flush that away.
Right.
You know what I mean? As opposed to a lights-out closer that just comes in and gives up a moonshot and then has to come back the next year and try to prove that he's not a guy that gives up game-winning home runs. Drew Parrish won't be giving up any more game-winning home runs as long as he's at Florida State. He's not going to be in the 9th inning for very many of them, and he certainly won't be after a 2.5-hour delay. So, plus I just think his makeup is such that he's a tough kid, and he's a real competitor, a bulldog, as Eleven likes to say. So I would be really surprised if that hung with him more than just, the next 5 months.
I wonder if 11 sees like Richie Lewis in Parrish. Like, because he seems to have a real – I mean, I don't know. I haven't covered 11 nearly as much as you do. I'm sure every year there's somebody he loves and just gushes about. But there's like a gleam in his eye when he talked about Drew Parrish and the way he competes. So I don't know, maybe he just feels that sort of that kindred soul or whatever, the guy that he used to coach. I'm sure he's always comparing guys he used to coach to guys he has on the roster now. But in terms of the offense, Corey, as you pointed out, Florida State currently they're 18th in the nation in runs scored. So
out of like how many, like a 330 teams or something, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like 18th in football stats where that's top. 18th would be top whatever, 12 or 14 or 15%.
297 out of 297 teams in the nation, they ranked 18th in runs scored. Their batting average though was 162nd.
Yeah, they don't have great batting averages typically, and they don't have a bunch of great hitters, so it's hard to have great batting averages. But they were in the top 9% of college baseball teams in scoring runs. I mean, at the end of the day, that's what an offense is supposed to do. However you have to do it, get on base and score runs, and that's what they did this year, even in a quote unquote down year. Yeah. So I just expect the same thing again next year. They just always do it. The key will be the pitching staff.
So who do you feel good about the pitching? I mean, Drew's going to be a starter. Why do you think C.J. Van Eyck? Van Eyck's another guy.
Van Eyck will be a starter. Drew will be a starter, and then that third spot. I mean, you don't know, man. You don't. We'll
how
see.
Can you feel good? You got to have 3 guys that feel good about your pitching staff, don't you?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think Austin Pollock will get a shot, and Austin Pollock had moments. They like him. Just for whatever reason, the second half of the season, he wasn't the kid that – and I know it was different competition, but it wasn't just that he was facing different competition. He couldn't locate the ball. He couldn't throw strikes some of the time, and that's just not – that's never really been his MO. And so, I think they're hoping he's the third guy. But when you're starting with Parrish and Van Eyck, that's a good place to start. I'm 100% sold on C.J. Van Eyck, and I think he will excel in a starter role. Because he's allowed, you know how he came into that game on Friday night and struggled and kind of, looked rattled. Well, that's going to happen. Even when you start, you might have an inning where you struggle, where you give up a run or two. But it's not as when you're a starter, you're allowed to have an inning where you give up a couple runs. You can still bounce back and be really good. We saw that with Carp a few times this year. Cole Sands a bunch actually, where he give up some early runs and then settle down. That's what you need out of a starter, and I think that kid is a kid that, even if he gives up a run or two early, will get you 6 or 7 innings and has incredible stuff. So you're looking at in my opinion, you're looking at, and maybe I'm too high on C.J. Van Eyck. He hasn't really proven it to this level yet. But I think you go into next season with one of the best 1-2 combinations in the country at starting pitcher. I think C.J. Van Eyck is that talented.
And then what do you think about the batting order? I mean, not batting order, but just in terms of the offense. I mean, Tyler Daughtry's back. That's good. Drew's back. That's good. You like Reese Albert.
Reese Albert's really good. Reese Albert's going to be a really big deal for them over the next 2 years. I think Cooper Swanson will play. J.C. Flowers has to become a better hitter. Just has to.
I think he actually did fairly well in the regional, I felt like.
Yeah, but he needs to be – yeah, sure. But is he going to be a slap 270 hitter, or is he going to have some pop? They haven't had many center fielders since I've been covering the team that hit 260 with one home run. I mean, that's not Florida State usually has center fielders that can get it done with power and with an impact bat, not just a serviceable bat. So yeah, they got to figure that out. They got to figure out first base.
Would you move
catcher.
Drew to first?
Who?
Would you move Mendoza to first?
No, I think they like him at third. I think that's where he'll play. This was really his first year playing third base, and there were certainly signs of that. But overall, I think he'll be a good third baseman. I think that's probably where he'll play at the next level. And I think what they'll try to do, maybe, I don't know what their middle infield is. I know Cooper Swanson was recruited as a shortstop. Maybe he plays first or gets a look in the outfield. But they got to figure that out. They're going to have, it'll be interesting. They don't have they don't have some guys waiting in the wings where you're like, yeah, that guy's going to be the guy. That guy's going to be the guy. They're going to be a young lineup next year, and it'll be interesting to see what they do. But again, the lineup is the lineup. They're going to average 6.5 runs per game. Got to figure out the back end got to figure out the rotation. Got to figure out a closer, and get it done early. So everybody has kind of set roles because it was just so fluid because of the injuries. It was just so fluid. So they got to have set roles. And I think something we haven't really touched on yet. I'm intrigued by the Tyler Holton draft situation.
Yeah.
I mean, I really am. I talked to some coaches over there at Florida State, and they certainly wouldn't be surprised if he's gone. They expect him, I'm sure, to be gone. He was draft eligible last year and was asking for a lot of money that he didn't get, but got offered a lot of money, just not quite to what he was asking, but well into 6 figures he was offered and turned it down. Then he comes back and gets Tommy John surgery 5 innings into the season. He's eligible again to be drafted. Well, he'll get drafted, but what are they going to offer him? A college kid coming off Tommy John surgery. He's not going to get offered anywhere near what he was offered last year. And he's also not eligible he won't be able to pitch till like April. So you wonder if he'll come back. This is me thinking, and I'm not a dad. I am a dad, but my son hasn't been offered any type of money to play baseball. But I wonder if the thought is, my thought would be, okay, you can't pitch anyway until April of 2019. That's the earliest you'll come back from Tommy John surgery. Why not? This is just me talking. He can hit. He'd be able to hit by then. He just can't throw. He could DH. What would be the risk in coming back to Florida State and pitching for 2 months, helping that team try to do something in the postseason, then get drafted in June, and if you prove over those 2 months when you're healthy that you're the old Tyler Holton, well, then you'll probably get offered the same amount of money you were offered after the 2017 season. Like, usually when guys go pro, it's because they want to jumpstart their pro career, to get it started. I want to get in the minor leagues. I want to start hitting. I want to start moving up the chain. Well, Tyler Holton can't do that because he's going to be injured. He's going to be rehabbing. So maybe come back to Florida State, pitch for 2 months. All you're doing is sacrificing literally 6 weeks of pro ball to pitch for Florida State, and the reward could be hundreds of thousands of dollars more offered if you prove that you're the same guy. I'm saying all this knowing he's probably gone. I'm just thinking that's something to think about. And if Tyler Holton comes back, and again, I would put that at 12%, but it's a chance. If Tyler Holton comes back, well, then that changes everything. Yeah. Even if he comes back, he doesn't come back till April. That changes everything.
All right, let's take a break. Let's come back.
All right, sorry, that was wordy.
No, it's good, man. It's the stuff I want. These are things that keep me up at night, man, but I'll sleep well this time around. He's Corey Maslon's Wake Up War Chant. I'll be right back after this. It's 97.9 ESPN Radio.
You're locked in to Wake Up War Chant on 97.9 ESPN Radio.
Wrapping things up here on this Tuesday edition of Wake Up War Chant. I'm Aslan. He's Corey. The show's brought to you by For the Table Hospitality. A reminder once again, folks, the second game of the Women's College World Series Championship Final. You can listen to it right here on ESPN 97.9, or rather 97.9 ESPN Radio. That game will be at 7 p.m. Oklahoma City time, which means it's 8 p.m.
97.9 ESPN Radio.
ESPN. Yeah, right here, 8 o'clock Eastern time. Noles going for their first ever national championship in softball. One victory away. Only Washington stands in their path.
It's 8 o'clock Eastern tonight?
Yes.
Okay, they moved it back an hour. Wonder what that's about.
Yeah, I think so. I had the bracket pulled up. There it goes. Yeah, 7 p.m. Oklahoma City time, 8 p.m.
Huh, all right.
If there's a game 3, it'll be at 8:30 on Wednesday, but let's hope it doesn't get to that.
Yeah, don't need to get to that. We don't want to watch any more softball. I don't want to watch softball on Wednesday. I don't want to do it.
I hear you.
That's it. You heard it. Don't want to do it. Neither did any of y'all. Y'all want to watch it on Tuesday and be done with it.
Corey, I just was thinking how cool it would be if I was talking about Florida State and Omaha in the championship series, one game away from winning their first ever national championship in baseball.
It's funny you brought that up, because you remember when you brought up the Red Sox and how that was improbable. The more I think about last season for Florida State baseball, that's when I just okay, it's just not happening. It will happen eventually, because they're going to give themselves enough chances eventually that it will happen. But this program, I don't know what the curse is, but last year they were a strike away from being out in the regional. Then they Dylan Busby has a triple off the fence. They went on a walk-off hit by pitch. And then Will Zerzow goes out and throw a 2-hit shutout to get them to the Supers, where they get to play Sam Houston State. If that can't get them, if that set of events can't propel them to a run in Omaha, then what can? And then they're up on LSU, and they can't field a ball. Stephen Wells, one of the best right fielders they've ever had, has a ball go through him. Cal Raleigh can't catch a baseball where the guy'd be out by 20 feet. I was thinking about that on Monday, because you're watching all these other regionals where Ole Miss loses to Tennessee Tech, and
later
Florida gets pushed to the brink and all that, and you're like, man, Florida State was down to the wire last year and then went on a run. Why couldn't it have continued in Omaha? Why? And it didn't. And so I'm like, all right, well, it won't. And
see, that's the thing. Surely Mike Martin has not gone into Omaha with the best team ever every single time. But surely at some point, a few of those times, he has had the best team in Omaha. So there's no confluence of events that ever winds up in that guy being able to smile and winning his last game of the year and walking out. So what I ask you is, not saying get rid of him now, today, tomorrow, whatever, but how would you have a succession plan for him if it's not going to be meat? Say he gets a 2-year extension with Wilcox. How does 2 years and then that's it help with recruiting? Because I guess that's part of the sell here, right? Is that they need some sort of stability to be able to continue to recruit at a fairly high level. So I just don't know. Everyone wants this succession plan laid out. How do how do you work it out? Who's going to want to wait 2 years that's not here right now? I mean, the whole thing with Jimbo worked out because Jimbo was already here, and it worked out great for a few years. Just if they're going to go that way, I mean, it has to be meat, I would think.
Well, yeah, I mean, any succession plan that Mike Martin would sign off on would include Mike Martin Jr. I mean, that goes without saying. And yeah, you couldn't be like, hey, coach at Evansville, in 2 years you're going to be coming to Florida State, but hey, for the meantime, just do what you're doing. That couldn't happen. I mean, I guess you could do something with Minkiewicz. You'd have to bring him on staff or some point, but they're not doing that either. So the succession plan, if they're going to have one, if they want, and this is the key question. It's kind of odd that Florida State wanted stability when they kept Jimbo Fisher, because it wasn't like he was a part of a great program at Florida State. He was a part of a 7-6 team, a 9-4 team, and a 7-6 team. But he was the head coach in waiting. Even though while he was the offensive coordinator, they won 60% of their games. It wasn't anything special. So the key that the decision that Florida State has to make is, do we want to keep what we have rolling as far as the stability of the program? Or do we want something completely different? And that I am of the opinion that when you have a team that wins 40 games every year, you'd want to keep you want to keep that culture in place, and you want to keep that the coaching staff in place. Whatever they do works. They're always good, and they're always in the postseason. So I get that. I'm on that. I'm in that camp. That's what makes sense to me. But I also see the other side where people are like, we can try something new. Like, okay, you've been great for 40 years, but you don't have a national championship. Maybe we can bring in somebody that has just better luck. Just get a lucky guy. Get a guy, whatever it takes. I remember it was actually a message board post back when Leonard Hamilton couldn't get to the tournament the first time around, his first 5 or 6 years. And there were always these extenuating circumstances, like Tony Douglas breaking his hand, or Al Thornton or Alexander Johnson getting ejected at Duke, which if they win that game, they're in the tournament. All these things, all these bad luck things that would happen where Florida State was close but just couldn't quite get over the hump. And one of the posters was like, look, man, fine, Leonard Hamilton's been a victim of bad luck. Why don't we go try to hire somebody that has good luck? Even if it's as simple as that, let's go try to hire somebody that doesn't have bad luck. So I can see that side of it too, where people are like, man, let's try something new, bring in some new blood. I'm of the opinion, I'm just in the camp, and I get that maybe it's not that popular a camp right now, that you keep working with what's been working. You keep working with what gets you to the postseason all the time. And eventually you break through. Because there is a chance you bring in somebody that doesn't know Florida State baseball, doesn't know the landscape, can't recruit as well, doesn't have the recruiting connections that the guys on the Florida State staff do now, and it falls off a cliff, at least for a few years. So that's the risk you take. I think Mike Martin Jr. would be more of a sure thing because he knows what this program needs, and he's helped run it for a decade and a half now. But, that's just my opinion, and I don't get to make those decisions. It will be interesting to see what tack they take and what their what Stan Wilcox's vision is and what he thinks is good for Florida State baseball.
I don't know if this is totally apples and oranges, but everybody always talks about, you make it to Omaha, you're one of the last 8 teams standing. If you make it to a super, you're one of 16, et cetera, et cetera. But, like, when you look at the tournament layout, you have to look at NCAA basketball. Like, would Kansas stand for, Bill Self not making it to the Final Four ever? Would, Kentucky, if Cal doesn't take him to the Final Four in 5 years, does Cal get to stick around? I mean, it's to the point, there was before I got to Florida State, it was birthright that they would get to Omaha. Now, I think since 99, they've been there, 3 times? I want to say maybe 3, 4 maybe in that span.
Probably, I think 8, 10, 12, 17, 4. So, probably 5 times in that span. Well, ever since the super regionals.
Yeah.
They owned regionals,
right?
Because they were always a top seed, and they always had more pitching than everyone else. So they would just destroy teams in games 4 and 5 because they had so much pitching. But that doesn't come in handy when it's just a best 2 of 3. And so they struggled for a long time in the super regional format.
Yeah. But people look at all the success they've had, why change things, why rock the boat? But I just feel like, well, if there's any sport that where Florida State's going to thump their chest about, I mean, football is fairly new in terms of being a new blood, blue blood, however people want to characterize it. But like Florida State baseball has always been around there. Why don't we treat Florida State baseball the way Kentucky treats basketball, the way Kansas treats basketball? Boeheim doesn't make it to the Final Four in 4 or 5 years in a row. He's gone. Krzyzewski doesn't make it to the Final Four 5, 6 years in a row. He's gone. And these guys built those programs for what they are.
I disagree with that. I disagree with that. I don't, because Krzyzewski's gone stretches where he didn't make the Final Four 4 or 5 years in a row. He's not leaving. Now he also has, what does he have, 5 national championships?
Yeah.
So he's fine. And Calipari has his. But let's say Calipari, that Anthony Davis team, let's say he tweaks an ankle in the Final Four game. And then, they play the championship game and Kentucky loses. So now Calipari's been there 10 years without a title. You really think he'd be on the hot seat?
Probably. If he didn't have a ring, I would think so, man.
I mean, even though he's getting them, he's a top 10 program every year. Well, let me ask you this. Okay, say Florida State softball loses the next 2 games. And I know it's not apples to apples because it's softball. There's not a ton of money in softball. Well, there's not a ton of money in baseball either. But say Florida State loses the next 2 games. Well, now Ronnie Alameda's been here 10 years. Hasn't won a national title. Is she like –
No, because it's the first time Florida State's ever made it this far. I mean, these are benchmarks that she's setting. I mean, what's the benchmark? I mean, Mike Martin's benchmark now are very good consistency. If they were winning 50, I don't know what the difference between winning 40 and 50 is. I mean, winning 40 games a year is amazing. It really is. I'm not trying to diminish that. I need to rewind back to what I said 15 seconds ago. But, I mean, they're not even get to Omaha once every once every 3 years. That needs to be what happens. And I guess it has happened here in the last 6 years. They've been there once every 3 years.
See,
make it to the championship series. Give us something just get to the championship series one more time and just at least get yourself there.
Well, that wouldn't matter. I mean, say they somehow got to the championship series last year and lost to Florida. Nobody'd feel good about that. It'd be Mike Martin choking again, and that wouldn't be anything to hang your hat on. Florida State softball has been there more than anybody else and not won it. So, and Alameda's been there. This is her 4th time there. So, certainly not her 18th. So I get that. It's not apples to apples. But I'm just saying that I think all you can do as an athletic director is get a coach in your program that will always get you to the postseason and always have highly ranked teams. Eventually, you have to think, especially in these kind of sports, that the luck – You just have to, like Kentucky. They finally won the national championship in basketball. They kept being really good, and John Calipari had great teams at Memphis and didn't win it. He was 3 seconds away from beating Kansas and didn't win it. So, and Kansas hasn't won it in a decade. So, if you just keep giving yourself enough opportunities, other than Florida State baseball, which is the exception of the rule, you end up winning it. Florida baseball had some incredible teams that didn't even win a game in Omaha, and then they go and win the thing. I just think it's hard to judge. It's hard to just judge baseball in national championships, but I get that's what he doesn't have, and so I don't. I don't know. I talk in circles when it comes to this.
Well, this is the thing. Ultimately, we're close to the end with Mike Martin. I mean, we're close to the end of his career at Florida State. So, to even really be arguing about this is silly. What needs to really be talked about is the future. And I guess to that point, let me give you a minute and a half, and then we gotta wrap things up here. I mean, if you're advocating on behalf of Mike Martin Jr., if you're advocating on behalf of Meat, how do you divorce him from the bad things that have happened in the last 15 years that he's been an assistant coach, and then how do you take credit for the good of it? I mean, I guess part of it is people say that 11 isn't out there recruiting, so if you make Meat the head coach, that gives you that, he hires an assistant and they'll have that much more bolstered of a recruiting staff, I guess. But, I mean, the Drew Parrish thing that everyone thinks is horrible. I mean, if Meat is in his ear, if he's the guy that's running the show a lot of the times, how does he not overrule his dad? Dad, there's no way. I mean, listen, I was fine with Drew Parrish going out there, but if you follow baseball orthodoxy, no way in any other – I mean, there's no way anybody brings a pitcher back out for 2.5 hour rain delay after throwing 100+ pitches. Again, I was okay with it, but if I'm okay with it because I'm crazy and I just want to see something nuts, like a guy coming back from a 2.5 hour rain delay and proving everybody wrong, and he didn't. But how does he divorce himself from the miscues that have happened here in the last 15 years? But that's how does he take good credit for the good parts of it? I guess.
Well, I think the big deal, man, is that it's just how you view the program. It's what prism you want to look through it to it. Maybe it's because I'm a Braves fan, and so I don't get so hung up on championships. How could I? Because I'm a Braves fan.
I got one. You have one though, Corey. You got one.
But 1 out of 14 with 3 Hall of Famers in your starting staff. You got 1 out of 14. So there were plenty of disappointments. But you got to just give yourself chances. And as long as you're good every year, that's what you have to aim for. And I just think there aren't. It's just a goofy sport. Kevin O'Sullivan wasn't any better coach last year than he was the year before. His guys just made the pitches they had to make in Omaha. Yada yada. College of Charleston won it one year. But that guy's not a better coach than Mike
He's assembled.
Martin.
I mean, what O'Sullivan is assembled is you have to win.
Well, sure, that's a bad example. The College of Charleston won it the one year, right? Wasn't that them?
Coastal Carolina.
Coastal Carolina. Yeah, that guy's not a better coach than Mike Martin. His team, Fresno State won it one year. You got hot at the right time. For whatever reason that hasn't happened with 11. But when you're looking at who to replace them with, and I get there will be a national search. I just
has to be
that,
there, but I don't know how you do a succession plan and do a search.
So then what? So what happens to Mike Martin Jr., who is by all accounts, like if you just using metrics, how we judge offenses, has been one of the 2 or 3 best hitting coaches in the country for the last decade and a half. So if his name was Mike Smith, would he be? Is it the Martin last name?
It's not. He's been here though. Like he's been here for 15 years or whatever. He's had a hand in these things. I mean, the name doesn't bother me. I think the Jeff Bowden comparison is totally not fair and is totally inaccurate. I just feel like, well, if you've been in this boat for this long, I mean, you got an.
But you're acting like it's an ugly boat that hasn't. I mean, I know they haven't won a national championship, but 5 College World Series, whatever. That's 15 years. It's been 200 wins. Whatever it's been, that's terrible math. That can't be accurate. It's much more than that. But, it's 45 wins a year for 15 years. I mean, those are good things. Those are positive things. I know they haven't won their last game, but by and large, this is still one of the 10 best programs in the country. So it's not like you'd be taking somebody from a sinking ship to put them up to say you're going to be like they did with Chimbo. Quite frankly, you're going to run our program. It's a guy that's helped steer a really pretty ship that just occasionally crashes into an iceberg.
Well said. All right, that's a wrap for us, man. Good stuff as always.
Let's do this all summer. Can we do this all summer? The Mike Martin Jr., Mike Martin debate?
Don't even, dude. I'm ready. I got my little app, my little notes app. I've got at least like 3 bullet points that all deal with baseball and the philosophies that have been in place here at Florida State for the last 20 years and why we should keep going and why we shouldn't keep going.
But let's be positive. And here's what I want tonight. I want it to be a 2-2 game in the bottom of the 7th inning.
Keep going.
With Jesse Ward up with the bases loaded.
Yes.
That's all I want. That's all we want. Give her one more moment. I want to walk off, and I want them all crowding around home plate and jumping on each other and celebrating that. Maybe that'll be what lifts the curse for Florida State Diamond Sports. Get this team to win a championship, and then the baseball team follows suit next year, and we're all happy.
Thanks, Ira Schoffel, for joining us from Oklahoma City. He's Corey Clark. I'm Aslan Hajavandi. It's Wake Up War Chant 97.9 ESPN Radio. Have a great one, folks.
WarChant.com is the ultimate inside source for FSU football and recruiting. And now you can get in on the action for free for an entire month. WarChant.com is offering a risk-free 30-day trial subscription. Get full access to the #1 website covering the Seminoles just by entering the promo code WarChant30. That's WarChant30. Sign up and get in on the world's most active FSU message boards. Receive breaking news, stories from our award-winning staff, plus get exclusive interviews and videos. Just enter the promo code WarChant30. WarChant.com, your ultimate Seminole sports source.